Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your sources, we dig in and pull out the key nuggets for you. Today, we're looking at something that's, well, it's been making some noise. The reported personal life of a major sports star, Cole Palmer. We've got a really interesting source here. It's not really about the gossip side. It's more about how these personal situations can actually ripple out into their professional world big time. So our mission today is basically to understand the kind of multifaceted impact of something like a reported relationship breakup on a young player, a Premier League game changer like Palmer. We're looking at it through, well, different angles: performance psychology, the media optics, athlete development too. It's really about grasping what this might actually mean for his immediate future and how people see him.
Yeah, and what's fascinating, I think, is how often we try to separate the athlete from the person. But the reality is, especially for someone under that kind of spotlight, those things are, well, they're deeply intertwined. So this dive into Palmer's situation, it helps us see exactly how personal stress points, or maybe even moments of, clarity or release, how they can show up right there in their performance on the pitch, their public image, even, inside the team.
That separation or lack of it is so key here. Okay, let's start there then. Let's unpack the potential psychological impact on his performance. Our source really emphasizes how relationships, especially public ones, they can be both things, right? A huge support system, but also potentially a massive pressure point. So for Cole Palmer, he's just come off this incredible breakout 2024-25 season, proved he belongs. What does a reported split like this actually represent for his mental state going into another tough season?
Well, it really does present this interesting psychological fork in the road. It really does. On the one hand, look, if there were maybe underlying tensions, difficulties behind the scenes, a separation, if it's resolved, could actually bring quite a bit of mental clarity. It's almost like, shedding a cognitive load, freeing up mental space that was maybe tied up in personal stuff.
Right.
So kind of paradoxically, he might come into the season sharper, more focused because of it. But the other side is, well, it could significantly increase emotional stress, especially when you factor in the sheer demands of last season. Let's be honest, the expectations Chelsea have now,
huge.
Exactly. They're even higher for 2025-26. And that emotional weight, that can directly hit concentration, decision-making, especially when the pressure's on.
Yeah, and the source, it really points to the next, 8 to 12 weeks as being absolutely crucial. We've seen it before, haven't we?
Yeah.
You think of players like Marcus Rashford, Dele Alli. They definitely seem to have dips in form after dealing with personal things, like the off-pitch noise just seeped in. But then you've got someone like, say, Cristiano Ronaldo, post that 2006 World Cup drama. He seemed to almost use that emotional turmoil as fuel, turn it into this incredible drive. So based on the source, what are the specific, maybe psychological cues we should be watching for with Palmer in the next few months, to see which path he might be heading down?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Fundamentally, we'll be looking for signs of how he manages what psychologists sometimes call distraction interference. Does he look sharp, decisive, present in training in those early games? That would suggest, mental clarity.
Okay.
Or do we start seeing maybe subtle hesitations, uncharacteristic errors, things that suggest his mind is still maybe wrestling with things off the pitch, his ability to either channel this or compartmentalize it effectively?
Yeah.
That's going to be a huge factor in his early season form.
Okay, so that's the internal state. How does that then ripple outwards into the public view, especially with this being, well, quite visible? Let's shift to the media angle. Public perception. Palmer's young, only 22. This kind of media attention, it's often called a double-edged sword. How does the source break down those two sides, the good and the bad?
Absolutely. So the source points out, look, from a purely marketing view, being in the headlines keeps him relevant. It boosts his brand visibility, might even attract endorsements.
Right, profile stays high.
Exactly. Some might argue, any publicity is good publicity, potentially. However, the flip side, that's where the danger lies. It adds this immense, sometimes unfair layer of scrutiny and pressure. It lets the off-pitch drama become part of his public story. And that narrative can then start to influence how people within the game see him. Coaches, management, maybe even teammates. It creates this story that can be really, really hard to shake once it gets going.
It's interesting because you could argue, couldn't you, that for a young star, a bit of celebrity drama might even add to their appeal for some fans anyway. But our source seems pretty clear. It advises Palmer to sort of tighten his inner circle, really try and control the narrative, stop speculation dragging into preseason. It even gives advice to the club's media team. So what's the core message there for Chelsea, for Palmer, in terms of handling this fallout publicly?
Yeah, the core message is definitely about proactive management. Damage control maybe, but also narrative shaping. For a club like Chelsea, especially now, image is hugely important.
Wow.
So the advice in the source is clear. Keep public interviews laser focused on football. They even suggest using his Club World Cup success, pivot back to that. Top trophies, top targets. Not TikTok trends or tabloid stuff. It's about putting out a really clear, unified message that reinforces professional, committed, trying to override those other distracting stories.
Okay, and building on that idea of narrative and image, let's talk about those reports. Cole seen partying in Ibiza after the Club World Cup. The timing, right after a reported split, that creates an interesting picture. How does our source analyze that specific situation?
Well, this is where it gets really fascinating, because you have this collision of two things that are on their own pretty normal, but together they create a significant optics issue. So on one hand, the source acknowledges, yeah, this is pretty standard footballer behavior. Season's done, young guy, millionaire, celebrates. Nothing inherently wrong there.
Okay, standard stuff.
But when you put it against the backdrop of a reported breakup, being seen partying, especially with someone like Wayne Lineker, who's so linked to that whole, high-profile Ibiza scene.
Yeah, that specific association matter.
It absolutely does. It can instantly reinforce or create this party boy image, and that might not be the image the club or maybe even Palmer himself wants to project right now. Not that serious, focused, professional image, especially with a new season coming up fast.
So the perception becomes almost as important as what actually happened. And our source flags this as another really key watch point for his development. How does this kind of public behavior, or the perception of it, impact his longer-term path as a top player?
Indeed. I mean, the fundamental challenge for Palmer, and frankly for any young star who gets this famous this quickly, is finding that balance. It's a delicate one. Enjoying your youth, the rewards, versus maintaining that elite professional discipline.
Tricky line to walk.
Very tricky. One careless video clip that goes viral, one misstep in public, one controversy. It could seriously stall the amazing momentum he's built. We've unfortunately seen it happen with other promising English talents in the past. So the big question going forward is, does he mature into this? Does his off-field professionalism develop alongside his on-field talent? Or will these external perceptions start to subtly, maybe unconsciously, creep into how he's judged, even by his coaches, his club?
And that influence, it could even reach right into the dressing room, couldn't it? His most immediate environment. Palmer's clearly becoming a key player for Chelsea, right? A central piece of that attack with guys like Caicedo, Enzo. How might personal stuff, if it's not handled well, actually impact the team dynamic, his standing within the squad?
Oh, there are definite risks there, absolutely. Tangible risks. If personal issues are causing distraction, you might see a dip in training performance, that's one thing. Or maybe a momentary lapse in focus during a really high-stakes moment in a match.
Critical.
Yeah.
Costly.
Very costly. And then there's the social dynamic. He could become the target of, unwanted dressing room banter. Or worse, constant questions from the press directed at him or the manager about it, creating a distraction for everyone. That kind of instability, that noise, it can definitely erode trust and focus on what's already a super competitive environment.
Okay, so there are clear potential downsides within the team.
But there's a flip side here too, which is just as compelling. If he handles this well, if he navigates this challenge effectively, maybe channels any frustration or even that newfound clarity we talked about, it could actually toughen him up mentally, really harden his mentality. It might even accelerate his journey towards being seen as a real leader within that squad, showing resilience under pressure, Like
a trial by fire, almost.
Exactly. It's a genuine test of character that could potentially forge an even stronger player, a stronger leader out of him.
Right. So wrapping this up then, what does this all mean for you? We've taken this deep dive, looked at how a personal situation for someone like Cole Palmer, someone so public, can have these really wide-ranging impacts on his psychology, his performance, his image, even the team around him. It's a really powerful reminder, isn't it? That for athletes at this level, those lines between personal and professional, they're often not just blurred. They can feel completely erased by that relentless spotlight.
Yeah, this deep dive really underscores that for these high-profile people, personal challenges are just never truly private, are they? They automatically invite scrutiny, they shape the stories told about them, and they demand this incredible, almost superhuman level of self-management. Understanding all these connections, these interconnected parts, I think it gives us a much richer, maybe more empathetic view of the intense pressures, the complexities these individuals face, living their lives so publicly.
So as you think about all this, here's a final thought to chew on. A provocative one, maybe. In a world where the personal lives of public figures are just increasingly out there, dissected, scrutinized, what role do we actually play? As the audience, the fans, the consumers of media, what role do we play in drawing those lines or maybe blurring them between someone's personal struggle and how we judge their professional life? And maybe, how might understanding these huge pressures change how you see the narratives built around your favorite athletes or any public figure going forward?